when it comes to understanding the Bible, big picture, or I know you focused in on particular books and done long book studies. What are, and the first voice they're going to hear, by the way, is yours.
I'm
So,
tracking.
um, what are some common hurdles or common pushback you get that you instantly just have to go, okay, hold on, let's clear this up.
In terms of what? In terms of
I think particularly in people approaching the Bible kind of from the outside, from the first time, or honestly, people maybe who were raised in the church who just never really paid attention to anything, and then all of a sudden they're trying to understand what you're doing, and they have all these lingering pediatric interference patterns that you kind of have to get over. So, what are some
yeah,
common
there are a
issues?
few different types of resistances to the Bible that I've encountered on the internet. One, template number one is the Christian who had things go wrong in the age of, kind of 90s youth group, which, by the way, I don't want to just smash that. It's really fashionable and to kind of get out our little monocles of knowledge and adjust our smoking jackets and say how much smarter and better we are than the people in the 90s who tried to teach us the Bible and be faithful. They had no idea there was going to be an internet. They had no idea there was going to be social media.
Right.
They tried to take a thing that was life-giving, that their parents and grandparents gave them, and they tried to give it to you and me. And on balance, I think they did a pretty good job. However, MySpace did happen in 2004, and then an avalanche of social media after that, and then it all ended up on your phone after that, and then it was just game on. Everything changed about how we think about each other, think about religion, think about the Bible, think about what church to go to, think about truth in general. Epistemology has been completely rewritten overnight for the first time in human history. I mean, so stuff's crazy, and as a result, you get these different templates for negative reactions to the Bible when you go and try to talk with people about that on the internet. Number one is something went wrong at church when I was growing up, youth group or whatever, and I don't like it, and it makes me feel bad. And the pastor was mean to my parents, or it was boring and I got scolded all the time. It could be anything, right? And then language evolved during the age of social media to sort of give voice to those negative feelings about church. And people are hurt about it. I basically just described my own experience that caused me to walk away from faith completely. It was the Bible that brought me back around. So that's a big part of why I like to do what I like to do. I think the thing makes sense if you maybe just step back from the hurt and the things that didn't go well in Faith 1.0 build and re-encounter the text, in a thoughtful way, reading it for what it's trying to be, as opposed to what gets inflicted on it sometimes. I think people encounter God there. I think it's really effective. So type number one of resistance is people are hurt by church. I get that. I think that is kind of winding down. People have all sort of en masse gone through that I was hurt by church process. Now we're coming out the other end in the age of authority crisis, and everybody's like, okay, well, I don't really trust politicians anymore. I don't trust advertising anymore. I don't trust athletes anymore. I don't trust entertainment anymore. I don't trust the medical world like I used to. I don't trust the economy and money. I don't trust anything anymore. Okay, what's the first thing I stopped trusting? I should go back to that. Oh, God and the Bible. Let's take another run at church. And I feel like that's kind of the moment that we're in right now. So I run into that kind of resistance to the Bible. I run into the resistance to the Bible that just says, culturally it doesn't mesh well
Right.
with recent opinions that have become fashionable. But you're a student of history. You know that fashionable opinions seem immutable and timeless when they first catch on and the snowball starts rolling downhill. But every set of fashionable opinions ever have eventually changed.
We just want to be on the right side of history on this one. Right?
That's adorable.
You were a history major, weren't you? Or you studied history? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. If I remember
I did.
correctly.
Yeah. Even all of my Bible and church stuff and seminary stuff, it was all angled toward classical history and history of the church and stuff like that, history of thought. So, yeah, but people don't know that, man. People study things where they actually make money and have real jobs. Unlike you and me, we study these super old things, and
Obscure
we have the
things.
luxury of learning these lessons. So it became just unfashionable. You used to get light social points for kind of doing vaguely Christian things.
Hmm.
Then you started to get light social points for sort of being against it and edgy. And then it became a thing where, like, no, you were going to have to pay a real social price for liking God, the Bible, and church at the height of kind of the age of madness there. And now we're to this place where I don't think anybody knows how anything is. And people who are part of that squishy middle in terms of what they think about God and the Bible and church, now they don't know where to go. No one knows what to do to look cool right now. We're all kind of just
Points are
floating
all
out there.
off. Yeah.
They're all off.
Yeah.
And then there are people who just think the Bible is too hard and that it isn't for them, and that it takes too much academic prowess to get into it, and they're intimidated by it, so they default to a very light devotional therapeutic reading of the whole text because they feel like they can do that, and they have seen modeled that it's important to study the Bible, and they want to. And so I guess what I'm trying to do on the internet is a response to those three main reactions against the Bible.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And I want to affirm what I know you already do affirm, which is people who were hurt in church. That's a real issue, that you don't just go like, hey man, quit being hurt and look at the facts of the Bible, right? You have to acknowledge, like, okay, yeah, I don't know what to do. Like, I generally don't know what to do with those people outside of say, like, hey, some Christians that aren't like that, right? That's not the whole church. It's a difficult problem, though. The church, I remember, I mean, even when I was a kid, I went to church for a couple of years, and I remember a guy, I was wearing a Danzig shirt. You remember Danzig?
Absolutely. Everybody thought he was going to play Wolverine in the 90s, and he never got the
Oh, well,
gig.
that would make sense. Yeah.
I see it.
One of the Satanic Panic was all gimmicky in heavy metal, except for Danzig, who might have actually been a real Satanist. Who
He
knows?
maybe meant it.
Yeah. When he ripped that chicken in the music video in half, that's when even the camera crew was like, "Oh, dang!"
Seriously, are we actually doing that? Yeah.
But I remember, I went to this church as a kid with my brother, and I was wearing a Danzig shirt, and this guy's like, "Do you think that church glorifies God or not?" And I remember looking back at him and going like, "Well, do you think your polo glorifies God or not? Like, what kind of what are we talking about here, right?" And I just remember thinking, these people don't get me. They don't care about me. Later, the guy who was the youth leader confirmed, like, they didn't like the skinheads showing up and smoking in the parking lot and around their nice, cute kids or whatever. So I totally get that. I'm interested in, like, how do you overcome that? Because I know you've told me before about all these people you're talking to who have that background, but they're plenty willing to have a conversation with you. So what do you think
Sure.
you're doing that creates that conversation?
I think they're willing to have a conversation with most people. I mean, there are two subcategories to what you're talking about there, though. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. I think even biblically we can say this. There are, I don't know, I guess I'm both subcategories as well. Subcategory number one, genuinely, some stuff at church was hurtful and it made me feel bad, and I'm right and they were wrong and they were mean. Also, sometimes I don't want there to be a God because he tells me what to do, and so I invent slights. I've done this in my relationships. Like, I don't like you. You're intimidating to me. It makes me feel bad when we're together, but you haven't done anything. Wait, I thought of something that I can project. Like, the truth is, I don't think there's a single person in this conversation, in this group we're talking about, who is just 100%, I was hurt, they were all bad, and they were wrong, and they were mean, and my hurt is reflective of the most truthful reading of the situation. I also don't think there's anybody who's 100%, I'm just victim-y and made up a social excuse for why I want to rebel against God. I think we're weird, and we're complicated, and we're insecure, and we're self-conscious, and sometimes hurt is because people were malicious and mean. Sometimes it's because they were dumb. Sometimes it's because we weren't paying attention and didn't read what was going on in the room very well and internalized these deep, abiding hurts that if we could watch that back on video now, we'd be embarrassed because everyone was being cool except me.
Right.
It was totally me.